Hi everyone, it's Zoe and Jo here from In Good Company, and today we wanted to talk to you about using your intuition in coaching. We see many people come through our coaching training programs, and obviously, as a training program, what you're there to do is to learn the different tools, the different techniques. And we see many of our trainees, really thinking about how to use and apply these tools. And as you kind of grow and develop in your confidence and your capability, your knowledge, your awareness of the tools, we also start to introduce that you can use your intuition in coaching. And I think something that I've certainly seen more of as I've grown in confidence with coaching and experience myself is that coaching can be a largely intuitive process. Once you've got the models and the techniques kind of laid down that kind of run in the background, intuition can play a really important role in working with your clients, because I think a lot of what happens in coaching happens in relationship. And when you are deeply connected with your clients, you can really start to tap into your own intuition and also pick up more about the senses and what's happening in the space in between you and your client in terms of what you're feeling and what you're sensing that might be coming from them or might be coming from the system in which they operate. What else would you share about kind of using intuition in coaching, Jo?
I was thinking about often when people come to coaching training, they probably have already been using their intuition, but without the knowledge of the tools and things behind it. And so there is that kind of evolution with it, almost like a full circle back to it, but with the background of the knowledge. For me, intuition is about listening beyond the words. It's about connecting to myself and the other person and what's happening. And then you have to make a judgment around, do you share your intuition? How do you share it? So do you share it as a question? Do you share it as a statement? Do you ask for permission to share it? You need to think about, is this about me or my client? So always if I choose to share this, then how can I do so in a way that is in service of my client's goal?
Yeah. And I think that's where the coaching training comes in, because I think there are so many people in the world who, as you say, intuitively help and guide people by asking questions, listening. But what we don't often have are the structures, the techniques, and the ways to do that in a safe and ethical way. So permission would be one example. So if you're working with a client and you get a strong sense of something, that can be your intuition, and it might feel like that. That's punchy. Like, does the client really want or need to hear that? Permission is really important when you're working with a client, because just because you're experiencing doesn't mean that it's necessarily appropriate to share. So obviously we work with that in coaching training in terms of how do you get permission. So we would talk about that in the contracting phase, and also in terms of on-the-spot contracting and sharing observations, and there are ways to do that, which is in service of your client. And coaching is about do with, not do to. And I think when you're just working intuitively and you don't have those kind of structures and knowledge about the coaching kind of tools and techniques, you could veer into a do to process unknowingly, because obviously you're coming from a good place. But partnership is really important when you're obviously working with anybody to help and support them.
Yeah, and I think that there's also a question of, I think it relates to patterns. So if you sense something, you might want to just check out and just kind of sit with it for a little bit, whether that's in a session or over a couple of sessions, until you've kind of almost had a conversation with your intuition, checking it out yourself before you share it. But just noticing it, I think, is the very first thing, is to get in tune with your intuition and really understand how to access it. What does it feel like when you are connected to your intuition, and how is that different? Often clients will notice that you've almost dropped back from a conversation, and what I notice is they're curious and they are hungry to know what's happening for you. And that can be a really open up a different door, I suppose, in the conversation, and a different door of possibility for your client.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say around connecting with your own intuition, because I think that in itself is an important part of being a coach. So understanding self, as we know, is one of the main core competencies with the EMCC anyway, but I think accepted across all of the coaching bodies is this understanding that you do the inner work on yourself, because you need to be able to distinguish between what's your intuition and what's your own stuff sort of getting in the way. So if you're working with a client and you just get this sense of, I don't know, be it dread or something, you know, as a kind of extreme example, you're sat there with a client, you're in conversation, you start to feel this familiar feeling of dread. You need to know, is that mine? Am I being triggered in some way by what my client is talking about? And am I, you know, relating and leaning into that? Or is it my intuition telling me something? And you can use it in both ways, but the more inner work you do on yourself as a coach, and we all know coaches need coaching too, you know, we're all at different stages of our own journeys, the more able you are to tap into and really use that intuition in service of your client, rather than it getting muddled up in your own, you know, your own stuff that you're working through.
Yeah, and I think one of the roles that we have is to, as coaches, is to help our clients tap into and connect to their own intuition as a source of maybe unreleased potential.
Yeah.
Asking them, what does your intuition tell you here? And that may not be a question that they've asked themselves. They might not trust it, because I think often people dismiss their intuition as almost something that's trying to trick them. Like if they've had an experience where they went with their intuition or their gut feeling and it didn't work out, then they can make a decision that I will never trust that. And so, you know, there could be some work to do around that.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this today, and I know you do too, Jo, is because many people, when they come in to being a coach, think it's all about the head work. You know, it's all about learning how to do coaching, and is a big part of that, of course. But there is a huge role for intuition, working, you know, with somatic senses, body language, energy, you know, and all of that. And I think that's why coaching is a really nice space for people with lots of different learning styles and approaches to be able to find their own style and way of doing it, because every coach is different. And so if you're thinking of, you know, coming and training to be a coach, know that there is something in it for all of you, and you will start to develop and flesh out what your particular style of coaching is going to be like. And once you've got the frameworks and the tools and the techniques, you know, you've got the freedom to design your approach how you want to be in the world.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I would just say is coming into my mind is I think intuition is a lot to do with alignment. So really sensing, is what the person is saying and their energy and their body language, everything about them, is it aligned? Or is there some misalignment and you're kind of tuning into that, and that's what's maybe igniting your intuition, that there's maybe something, you know, something to investigate or explore or discover there, that maybe is a blind spot for your coaching clients. So it's a fascinating area. It's, you know, you can't necessarily pick up a textbook about it. It's something you need to actually experiment with, spend time with, and we would encourage you to do that. And, you know, having safe spaces to do that can be the difference that makes the difference.
Yeah. Brilliant. So that's probably it for this morning or today on intuition. If you have enjoyed listening to a video, check out more. You can see our vlog on our website, which is www.igcompany.co.uk, and that's where you can also find information about our Coach CPD programs and coaching qualifications.